life in a small mountain village. She was 30 now, still unmarried, and people often whispered about her behind her back. Some said she was too proud, others said she was too soft. But the truth was simple. Elena believed in love, not in arrangements. She had spent most of her life taking care of her widowed mother, helping neighbors and living with dignity. Her beauty was gentle and natural, like a flower that didn't try to be noticed. Yet everyone noticed her. One summer morning, the entire village buzzed with shocking news. Baron Victor Dalmont, the wealthy man who owned almost every piece of land around, was looking for a wife. He was known as a mysterious figure, rich, powerful, and feared. No one dared to speak to him directly. People said he had a tragic past, that his fiancée had died many years ago and he had closed his heart ever since. He lived alone in a grand stone mansion that looked down upon the valley like a lonely castle. When the Baron's servants came to Elena's house, her mother could barely believe it. They brought an offer. The Baron wanted to marry Elena. At first, her mother thought it was a mistake. Why would such a powerful man want her daughter, who owned nothing but kindness? But the servants said the Baron had already chosen her. They spoke politely yet firmly, as if it was not an offer but a decision already made. That night, Elena sat beside her mother in silence. The candle flickered between them. Her mother's eyes were full of worry. "My child," she said softly, "he is a man no one dares to question. But he has suffered much. Maybe your goodness can heal him." Elena's heart was heavy. She didn't dream of wealth or titles. She wanted peace, a simple home, and love that felt true. But she could not disobey her mother, who believed this match was fate. So with quiet strength, Elena agreed. The next week, a carriage arrived to take her to the Baron's estate. Villagers gathered around to watch as she stepped inside. Whispers followed her. "She's 30 and still untouched. She will be ruined by that man. She's too innocent for his world." But Elena didn't reply. She only looked out the window as the carriage rolled away, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. The mansion was far more enormous than she had imagined. The air felt colder, the halls dimly lit. Portraits of old noblemen stared from the walls. When the Baron entered the grand hall, Elena's breath caught for a moment. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that looked carved from stone. His eyes, gray and distant, carried both power and sorrow. He spoke in a deep voice, calm but without warmth. "I hope the journey was not tiring," he said. Elena bowed her head slightly. "It was fine, my lord." The wedding was held quietly in the estate's chapel. There were no guests, no celebration, just a priest, 2 witnesses, and silence. The Baron placed a simple ring on her finger, and that was all. Afterward, he showed her to her room, far from his own. It was clear he had no intention of forcing her company or affection. The first few days were strange. She ate alone, walked the empty halls, and heard the echo of her own footsteps. Sometimes she saw him reading in the library or speaking briefly to his servants. He was always polite but distant, like a man locked behind invisible walls. Still, Elena didn't complain. She began to bring small changes to the cold mansion. She opened windows to let sunlight in, dusted the forgotten furniture, and planted flowers in the garden that had long been neglected. She even started cooking simple meals herself, surprising the servants with her humble manners. One morning, she placed a cup of tea on the Baron's desk with a small note. "I hope you rest well today." He didn't reply, but she noticed the empty cup later, and that was enough to make her smile. Days turned into weeks. One evening, when she went to the library to return a book, she found the Baron there, standing by the fire. He looked surprised to see her. "You read these books?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she replied. "They help me understand the world outside these walls." He stared at her for a moment. "You're not afraid of me?" Elena looked up, meeting his eyes. "No, my lord. You only look lonely." Those words touched something deep inside him. For a moment, the hard expression on his face softened. He nodded slowly, as if remembering something he had lost long ago. From that night, something changed. The Baron began to appear more often. He would find reasons to speak with her, asking about the garden, the meals, or the servants. Sometimes he even joined her for dinner, though they spoke little. The silence between them was not heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. Elena noticed that the Baron watched her when she wasn't looking, especially when she smiled at others. He had begun to care without realizing it, and in her gentle heart she began to see beyond his roughness. She saw a man who carried too much grief, who didn't know how to show warmth anymore. The villagers, however, grew restless. They whispered that Elena was trapped, that she must be living under his control. Some even claimed she would soon return in tears, but none of them knew the truth, that she was slowly healing a man everyone else had given up on. One late evening, heavy clouds gathered over the valley. Thunder rolled, and rain began to pour endlessly. The storm lasted all night. Lightning struck near the village, and the river began to rise. By morning, word reached the mansion that several cottages had been destroyed by a landslide. Families were stranded, shivering, with nowhere to go. Without hesitation, Elena rushed to the Baron's study. "We must help them," she said urgently. The Baron looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Prepare the great hall," he ordered the servants. "Bring food, blankets, and dry clothes." Soon the gates opened, and frightened villagers entered the mansion. They couldn't believe their eyes. Elena, once the shy woman they pitied, was leading everyone with calm strength, comforting children, organizing food, and making sure every person had a place to rest. The Baron stood beside her, carrying supplies and giving orders. The sight stunned everyone. The man they feared was working beside his wife as an equal. That night, as the storm raged outside, the grand mansion glowed with warmth and kindness for the first time in years. When the morning sun finally rose, the villagers gathered in the courtyard. The Baron stood next to Elena, both of them covered in mud and rain. The people looked at them in disbelief, their old judgments fading away. Something had changed, not just in the Baron, but in the hearts of everyone watching, and though no one spoke it aloud, they all felt the same thought. The woman they once whispered about had done something no one else dared. She had brought life back into a man's soul. But none of them knew yet what Elena and the Baron were about to reveal that day, a truth that would leave the whole village speechless. Long and terrible storm, the air smelled of wet earth and broken trees. The village looked quiet but wounded. Many homes had fallen, animals were lost, and families had spent the night inside the Baron's mansion, a place they once feared to even look at. Now that same mansion had saved their lives. Elena stood near the doorway with her sleeves rolled up, helping the servants serve hot soup to the people. Her hair was loose, her face tired, yet her eyes were calm and kind. The Baron watched her silently. He had never seen someone move with such quiet power. She spoke softly, but everyone listened. She comforted crying children, thanked the servants for their work, and even reminded the Baron to eat something after hours of helping others. When the storm finally ended, people began whispering again, but this time it was not gossip. It was wonder. "Look at her," one villager said. "She's leading everyone like she was born for it." Another replied, "And the Baron, he listens to her." By the afternoon, the sky was clear and the roads to the village were safe again. People prepared to return to their homes, but before they left, Elena and the Baron asked everyone to gather in the main hall. The villagers entered nervously, unsure of what was coming next. The Baron stood beside his wife, his hand resting gently on hers, a sight that shocked them all. He looked at the crowd and said in a steady voice, "You once feared me. You believed I was a cruel man. Perhaps I was. But this woman beside me has changed everything. She brought light into this house and into my heart." Elena looked up at him, surprised. Then, taking a deep breath, she faced the people and said, "Many of you think I live here as a prisoner, that I was forced into this marriage. But that is not true. The Baron never forced me. He gave me time to decide whether I wished to stay. He treated me with respect. He never touched me until I chose to be his wife, not just in name, but in truth." A long silence filled the room. The villagers looked at each other, embarrassed by their old words and thoughts. Elena continued gently, "He was a lonely man carrying sorrow for years. I only showed him kindness. The rest he did himself. A heart can change when it feels seen." The Baron's voice broke slightly as he said, "Her kindness reminded me that wealth and walls mean nothing if a home has no warmth. I had everything, land, servants, power, but no peace. She gave that to me." Tears filled many eyes in the room. The same villagers who once mocked Elena now bowed their heads in shame. One elderly man stepped forward and said quietly, "We were wrong about you both." Elena smiled and replied, "No, you were only afraid of what you didn't understand. Fear makes people say unkind things, but love, even the quiet kind, has the power to change hearts." That day became the start of something new. The Baron opened his mansion to the villagers for the next few weeks. He sent builders to repair homes, gave food and tools to those who had lost everything, and even opened the library so children could come and read. The people who once saw him as cold now greeted him with respect, and they all knew the reason for the change: Elena. Months passed and the village began to flourish again. The fields were greener, the river calmer, and the laughter of children filled the air once more. Every Sunday, the Baron and Elena would walk down to the village together. They would stop to talk with farmers, buy bread from the market, and visit the small chapel. People noticed how he always carried her basket, and how her smile made him look years younger. One afternoon, Elena's mother visited. She had worried for so long, but when she saw her daughter's eyes filled with peace, she wept with joy. "You have changed him, my child," she said softly. "No, mother," Elena replied. "He changed because he chose to listen to his heart again." The Baron treated Elena's mother like family. He built her a small cottage near the mansion so she could live comfortably. Sometimes the three of them would sit together in the garden at sunset, sipping tea and talking about simple things like flowers, rain, and memories of the past. Elena's presence continued to transform everything around her. The servants, once stiff and afraid, now laughed freely. The mansion, once dark and silent, filled with the sounds of life, music, conversation, and the soft footsteps of people who felt at home. But the biggest change was within the Baron himself. He learned to smile again. He began helping with village affairs, not from duty but from care. He set up a small school for children and offered work to struggling families. People no longer called him the Cold Baron. They now spoke his name with respect and warmth. Elena's story began spreading beyond the valley. Travelers who passed through carried tales of the lady who melted the stone heart. Some called her a saint. Others simply said she was proof that gentleness was stronger than pride. One evening, as the first winter snow began to fall, the Baron invited Elena into the old library, the same place where they had first truly spoken to each other. A fire burned quietly in the fireplace. He handed her a small wooden box and said, "It's been 1 year since you came into my life." Elena opened the box carefully. Inside, she found a simple wooden locket. When she opened it, she saw 2 tiny words carved inside: "Be kind." She gasped softly. "How did you know?" she asked. He smiled. "You wrote those words on one of your small notes months ago. I kept it. Because that was the moment I realized love doesn't shout. It whispers." Elena's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of gratitude. "You were given to me by fate," he said, holding her hand, "but you stayed by choice. And that has made all the difference." They stood quietly for a while, the firelight dancing on their faces. Outside, snow covered the fields and rooftops, turning the whole world white and peaceful. Inside, warmth and love filled the air. Years later, when travelers visited the valley, they would hear the story from the villagers. They spoke of a woman named Elena, who married a man everyone feared and changed him with kindness. They would tell how she taught the people that love doesn't need grand gestures. It just needs patience and a pure heart. The Baron and Elena grew old together, walking hand in hand through the same garden she once planted. He would often tell her, "You gave me life twice, once when you came, and again when you forgave the man I used to be." And when children asked who she was, their parents would smile and say, "She was the woman who taught us that gentleness is stronger than fear." In the end, the story of Elena and Baron Delmont became a legend passed down through generations. Their mansion, once a place of silence, became known as the House of Kindness. People still visit the valley to this day, not to see riches or grand walls, but to walk in the garden where love bloomed quietly and changed everything. Elena's name became a symbol of quiet strength, the kind that heals hearts, brings peace, and reminds the world that even the coldest soul can find warmth again, if touched by true kindness